Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about difficulty or perceived difficulty of training, because the interesting thing for me is that I find my dynamic effort squat and deadlift days to be the most difficult and most taxing of my training. And I also know a number of other guys who are on conjugate who find it to be the same. Now, you'll get some people who will say, well, I can see why maybe your max deadlift days wouldn't be it because you're just doing one rep, but then they forget that I do more volume on those days, right? If I do a max deadlift day, I do more training volume for supplemental work than I do on a speed day because it has less work on the main lift. You're just ramping to a one rep max, which by the way can take you up to a half hour to ramp up because you've got to kind of warm up a little bit. You've got to peak, you've got to ramp everything up. It could take you up to, in some cases, up to 30 minutes to get to your max. Now, usually less. I'm giving an extreme example, but I tend to do a lot more work on those days. I do more total work relative to pounds moved because I know that I've only done a heavy one rep max, that I can do a bunch of supplemental lifts, and a lot of them I'll do 5 sets. It's not uncommon to do 20 sets of big supplemental lifts or more in some cases on a max effort squat or deadlift day. Benching days, because it's only upper body and it's less fatiguing overall, I'm going to do even more because we have more small muscles in the upper body that need to be trained. So sometimes I'll do 25 or even 30 sets of movements afterwards. So it has less to do with the total work being done in regard to that of how difficult it is, and more to do with the fact that the modalities itself of the dynamic effort are so taxing. And it's not that you feel beat up from a recovery perspective. And that's the really fascinating thing about it. I don't feel under recovered the next day after speed work. It doesn't beat you up. It's the performance aspects of it. Because what ends up happening is that when we're lifting explosively, we exert a lot of effort. And if you guys watch, I think even in that one, like you'll see me with the speed squatting, a bunch of those you see me sweating. It's wintertime technically, and my place is air conditioned. I keep the AC on and fans on full time. Like, I promise you it's less than 70 degrees Fahrenheit in here where I'm training, and I'm sitting in a fan when I'm not doing the speed work. But notice I'm breaking a serious sweat. Doing doubles. You don't see that happen to me when I do 20 reps for hip belt squats, right? You guys have seen me do 20 rep sets with hip belt squats, and I don't break a sweat like that. The exertion, the actual exertion and amount of exertion on your dynamic days is tremendous. They're hard. And when you're taking 60 seconds between sets, which is what I do, so even if I do 12 doubles on squats and 12 doubles on speed pulls back to back, I take 60 seconds. You're back under that bar after 1 minute. And especially with stuff like the safety bar or with bands or chains or whatever, it's just that drive through at the top because you're exploding as hard as you can. And there's cases like right now, because I've only started rotating this stuff back in after a few months of not doing it, after having done it for a long time. I did it for 8 months straight, 7 months, I don't know. Whatever I did it for. It was quite a long time last year. But working it back in, having to build the speed back up, but I'm exploding as hard as I can. You're treating every rep like it's a one rep max. You're trying to explode as hard as you can for a large number of sets. Okay, so you're getting maximally tight, bracing, exploding with everything that you have. And that rate of force production carries a certain amount of fatigue. And when you take the short breaks, your heart rate and your breathing go way up. It's like doing cardio. Your heart rate goes way up. Your body temperature goes up. Even in a cold room, even doing these low reps, you will sweat. You will struggle to breathe sometimes. It carries a conditioning component. And I find a lot of guys, when they first start doing speed work, if they don't have any conditioning, they actually run out of breath. I've known of guys who are on the ground by the end of speed squats. And particularly when we start messing with stuff like the safety bars or large amounts of the accommodating resistance, the way it pulls on your upper body, some of this stuff makes you fight to breathe. You're fighting to breathe on a lot of it. And so therefore you have to brace correctly. You have to have full lungs. You have to drive. It has a conditioning component. And you get headaches. You get nauseous. Like there are times on some of my speed work to where I actually get a headache. Speed squats tend to sometimes make me sick to my stomach. It's hard. It's some of the hardest training you will do. When I compare this to, say, just doing pump work to failure, right? Doing dips or something to failure, doing a smaller leg movement to failure, those are hard. They're challenging, right? They're challenging, but they're not as much so as the speed work is. Like, I find it to be really, really taxing personally. And you know what? You might disagree. You might find something else to be, but I find it to be difficult. Like, I do not look forward to speed squats. I do not look forward to them at all. Like, I look forward to max effort days. Max deadlifting, that's my favorite day. Which I only get the max effort deadlift day every 2 weeks now because I have to rotate it with squats. But that's fun. It's like rip that heavy weight off the ground for a max, the biggest weight you can handle, and you're done. It's exciting. It's fun. I get a high off of it. I enjoy it. I love that. The speed squats, though, whoo, they kill me personally. Speed deadlifts are a little better, but again, your hands start to hurt. Your upper back starts to hurt. They build up this accumulation of fatigue also, especially if you've done speed squats first. It's like by the time you're done with this, you don't want to do anything else. But then I still have to do stuff. And I actually give my clients, I make it one of their easier days. So even for clients, because I know this, I give them the smallest amount of supplemental work on their dynamic effort lower days. They're still there, but some of them, I only make them do like 10 total sets of anything and then go home. So some of them, I literally have them do just some rows or some good mornings. Or some good mornings and some hamstring curls or whatever it is that they need to get done, depending on where they're at in their training. I mean, they always do good mornings after. That's never taken out. Everybody does good mornings after. But that's what I do for a lot of them, just to give them that break. And I tend to have them do it towards the end of the training week anyways. But it's so taxing compared to all my other days. Max effort bench, max effort squat deadlift, dynamic effort bench. They're all easier in terms of just getting in and doing the work. But here's the fascinating thing about it. Some people would say, well, if it's that hard, then why do it? Does it beat you up? It doesn't beat you up, though. A few hours later, you feel fine. That's the beauty of it. It's one of those things that as you're doing it, the fatigue is intense. It's tough if you do it right. But it doesn't beat up recovery. It doesn't beat up recovery. Dynamic effort work seems to have a phenomenal stimulus to fatigue ratio, because not only do you get lots of hypertrophy from it, potentially your speed strength, potentially practicing setups, first reps, all this rate of force production. And again, you guys have to remember the quality reps are very, very high. The effective reps are very high on speed work. It is legitimate hypertrophy work. You have a conditioning component that forces you to breathe, but it's not difficult to recover from. Like, not at all. It's like fascinatingly easy to recover from, because again, when you're finished with all of it, you feel fine. I don't ever even get sore the next day on a speed day. I usually wake up feeling refreshed. I don't feel fatigued the next day after this day, even though it's the hardest day. It doesn't impede recovery that much. It's just that the training itself is brutal, and sometimes for a couple hours after, you're really fatigued sometimes too, depending on how hard you push the supplemental work. Like for me, the reverse hypers are really intense the way I do them right now, because I push them as hard as I can. But again, the fascinating point, it's the hardest workout out of this style, in my opinion, to make it through the workout if you're doing it correctly, because you want to quit. Like when you're speed squatting, you want to quit halfway through, especially when you look at it, you've only got 2 or 3, 4 sets left. There are times when you go, I don't really need to do these. That's how the brain works. I don't really need to do these. So you've got to kind of dig in and do it. But then afterwards, it doesn't beat your recovery up. You bounce right back, which makes it really a phenomenal and interesting form of training. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.